Hi, I'm Stephen Carson, coming to you from St. Louis, Missouri, in these United States. Um, and I still haven't solved this problem. I've got a dark background that we've set up and a navy coat. So since it's Friday for me, I'm gonna go casual here. How about that? And let's try this. Okay, now I don't look like I'm disappearing into the background. Okay, let's see here. Okay, excellent. Bringing on guests. This is exciting. We are, oh, should I say anything else? I don't know. Join the Discord, 700 strong now. And then we have a non Discord platform for those who don't want to be annoyed by the way Discord is. And let's see, I need to have that control room forward. Okay, here we go. Let's give this a try. Okay, give me just a sec, guys. I want you to say hello, but I need to have the chat ready to tell me if they can hear you. Okay, go ahead. First of all, in a triumphant return, Mad Mercenary, hello.
Hello there.
And then we have Ryan Turnipseed with us.
Hello, how are you?
And let's see. JG is shocked by my casualness. Yeah, they can't see me unless they open the YouTube link, then you'll see me eventually. But they can't see me just because the way our setup is. But all I did was take my coat off. I still have a bow tie on. So, okay, good. Yes, they've confirmed Mad Merc and Ryan are coming through. Okay, good. Had a little bit of excitement. I am taking one of my children to an art class on Friday afternoons now, and we hit a pile up. Fortunately, we were not in it. We were behind it. Multi-car pile up on the highway, and so that set me back, and I moved the stream a little bit, but still couldn't make it on time. So anyway, having said that, let's get right to it. We're going to talk about some movies. Oh, so part of the reason I thought about this is for the Mises Institute, and I will share this page soon. For the Mises Institute, I did a page on what is it? Films about liberty in the state, something like that. And I did this a while ago. So oh, there it is. Films on Liberty in the State. I will share this link in the chat. And it's got a whole bunch of stuff in it. And that's what I'm going to pick from for my movies. And I think the Ryan and Matt Merck have possibly picked other things, not necessarily on that list, might be. Anyway, you'll see a lot of movies on there. And part of the reason I remember feeling proud of this, I was at the Mises Institute for something, and somebody from Europe said that they really loved my movie list. And I was like, oh, really? Why is that? And I said, well, like, you reviewed this movie called Hate, and you made a great point about what the movie demonstrates, but that was not the politics of the movie makers at all. Like, basically, I was doing, like, subversion. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I was subverting their subversion or something like that. And so the folks, I think they were from France. The Mises or the folks I was at the Mises conference with from France were just cracking up because they were like, oh, if they could only see how you interpreted their film, they would be so mad. You know. So anyway, I take it as okay to be creative in how we take these films. There's a lot of arguments about textual analysis and author's intent and stuff like that. I'm taking the, what is it, a postmodern perspective? I don't know. I'm taking the perspective that if I feel like the movie has an anti-state lesson in it, then I want to talk about it, whether the movie makers saw it that way or not. Who knows what their motivations were. So go ahead, Ren.
I think in good Rothbardian tradition, we just call it good old-fashioned revisionism, wouldn't we?
Yeah, right, exactly. Nothing wrong with that. So yeah, there may be a little bit of revisionism. I don't think I thought about trying to get into the Star Wars series, which I do have on the list, and you can see what I wrote about it there on the Mises page. Um, but with the sheath pill and all this stuff, I decided it'd be too complicated. That I don't really want to do that today. I want to do a little bit quicker stuff. We're each gonna do at least three films, and then we'll see if we have time. My time's even more limited now because of all this nonsense. But anyway, okay. And in particular, we're going to start with Mad Merc, since you could potentially uh, not be able to stay with us the whole time, as you warned us, Mad Merc. I'm just going to have you go through your three picks in a row, and then we'll move on to Ryan. All right, rather than round robining.
Okay.
All right.
Um,
So, what's your first?
my first film is a film called The Castle. Now, The Castle is an Australian-made
Yes.
film. It's a comedy. It centers around a family, and they have a home. And in fact, their whole street is situated right next to an airport. And this airport and the government offer them a sum of money to move. They don't want to move, as it's quite apparent from the film's plot. The whole plot is them in a legal battle not to move and to retain their property rights. It's a very funny movie. Uh, the family has a bunch of characters in it, very iconic characters. The premise of the movie is basically every man's home is his castle, and that
Right.
line is used in the movie in the conclusion. Um, it's a great film because it emphasizes the fact that the airport and the government are actually colluding together. There are certain parts of the film where there is intimidation used. People come to the home at night. The family has to use a gun at one point to protect their property. Um, there's very much uh, an emphasis on this lower class family getting help from a lawyer working pro bono for the very principle of protecting their property rights. It's a very good film about property rights. Very good film about uh, individual liberty, about how a person can own and should not be intimidated by force of the government to give up what they rightfully own. So very many libertarian themes, very many themes about freedom in that film.
Yeah, this is a big favorite. I am so glad you picked it. It is on my list. In fact, I've got a couple quotes from it in my little capsule review. Oh, let me be clear, by the way, that this page that I shared, this film list, and I should put it in the video description if I can remember to do it. Um, it is not meant to be full film reviews. I don't consider myself like a film critic, right? It's more, here's enough about the film that you, the sort of libertarianish person, would here's why I think you would find this film interesting, right? Um,
Hmm.
and so they're capsule reviews. They're generally pretty short. So anyway, the castle is one of my favorites on this list. It honestly is, Mad Merc. I'm not just making that up to stroke Australians or something. Though of course we are feeling rather sympathetic to some tradies this week. But anyway, um, um,
Um,
go
yeah,
ahead.
go ahead.
Yeah.
I was
So
about to. Yeah,
no,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Mad Merc.
Oh, just on that tradies comment,
Yeah,
that's a very complicated situation, so I wouldn't
I know. I
lend
know.
my support too quickly.
Yeah, yeah. I know. I know. But anyway, I really do like the film. It is really principled, as you already outlined. Um, and what just can't be overemphasized is that it is really quirky and fun. This is not like sitting down for a political sermon. I mean, it's got this theme and it's very strong and it's enjoyable that it has this theme, I think. But it is not like a sermony film. It is a really funny, weird, like, okay, didn't expect that kind of film. Here's a couple lines that I shared from it. The father of the family decides to fight back against the home being compulsorily acquired. His lawyer explains to him the hopelessness of his resistance. There is an ironclad agreement between federal, state, and local governments and the Airports Commission. And Daryl replies, well, where's the agreement with Daryl Kerrigan, 3 Highview Crescent, Coolaroo? Great line. And then there's a little quote from it that I love so much. Investigation reveals that the eviction comes from a wealthy businessman who's in cahoots with the government. And they say it's a way of privatizing without privatizing. I thought that was really nice. And when they offered Daryl more compensation, eventually they start. He's putting up a fight, and they decide to, try to settle. Right, give him more compensation. He says, "I don't want to be compensated. You can't buy what I've got." Which brings in the whole issue of interpersonal utility comparison, right?
Yeah.
A little economics theory point there, right? They're like, look, your house is worth this much, and he says, no, my house is worth what it's worth to me, which is different than a dollar amount that you want to assign to it, right? Yeah, go ahead, Ryan. You were going to comment.
Yeah. So just from my personal life, the class that I'm taking started off really strong in terms of economic theory, and now we're on to utility, and it's measuring everything in terms of utils.
No,
And
no,
yeah.
Um,
wrong.
However, yeah, very wrong. Fortunately, I have the foreknowledge to critique it as I go along to kind of still know what the other side thinks without adopting it wholesale. But that point about people valuing things differently is kind of like that is the foundation of correct economic thought, is the idea of a no universal objective value.
subjective
Right.
value theory.
Yeah.
Correct. Yes, and you can if you have that. Just kind of like a thought experiment that I was doing the other night. You can basically derive any of our axioms from that and just like personal observation.
Right. One last thing I'll say, looking at my review of The Castle, 1997 film, by the way, Australian, obviously, very Australian. It's fair to say, Mad Merc, wouldn't you say?
Yes, it's very much a iconoclastic film.
Yeah. I say in the review, and hopefully you understand what a strong recommendation this is. I say a great, fun Rothbardian film. And what you might not pick up from that is there's sort of 2 layers to that. On the one hand, of course, is the whole perspective of it about property rights and intersubjective utility comparisons. All of that is totally in line with Rothbard's thinking in the film. But there's more. I'm saying more than that when I call it a Rothbardian film. It's high praise because Rothbard himself wrote film reviews. If you've never seen them, I recommend them to you. Read his review of Woody Allen's Manhattan, for instance, which he loved, by the way. Rothbard did not like, what did he call them? I'm sure he had a better phrase. He had a great turn of phrase. But basically, talky, dull, European or continental style films, that were sort of depressing and existential. He's like, it should be fun to go to the movies, and that is part of what I mean by calling this a Rothbardian film, not just in what its principles, but it's the kind of film that I could just see Rothbard totally cracking up at, just really enjoying this movie, because it's just got a lot of fun and life and quirkiness, Okay, any other comments on The Castle, Madmer?
No further comments to add.
All right, what's next?
The next film is, I believe this will spark up great conversation, is Amazing Grace. Now, Amazing Grace, for those who do not know, is a film about the abolition of slavery by Wilberforce and his struggle with faith and politics to destroy a practice which enslaved millions of people over hundreds of years, if not thousands of years. And it basically is not just a religious film, but obviously with the idea of anti-slavery, it's the idea of personal ownership and people being able to decide how to live their own lives. There's ex-slaves who come and help him in his fight, and they explain the situation in greater detail to him, and it's a very good film about one being able to own himself, and not only own himself but able to live with himself.
Right, and it even features, as the title of the movie might suggest, one of the characters in the film is the author of the words for the hymn "Amazing Grace." And,
Oh, okay, right.
What do you know his name, Ryan? I'm blanking. It's probably in my review. It's in my review,
No,
right?
I do not
The
remember
man,
his name, but
I know a little bit about the man. He was an ex-slaver who
Exactly.
yep,
turned
I
away
got it.
from slavery.
John Newton,
that's it.
That's
Yep.
it.
the author of Amazing Grace, and someone who himself was a reformed slave trader and really did. This wasn't just like, based on a true story kind of stuff. He really did directly influence Wilberforce, is my understanding.
Yep.
He influenced Wilberforce to push to end the slave trade, which Wilberforce
After
really dedicated himself to,
there's also from the libertarian angle, there's stuff like bad economic arguments used by obviously within the debates for slavery. So, for example, the foundation of the British economy being based upon slavery. There's business and political collusion. Yep. So there's business and political collusion to try and stop Wilberforce. And Wilberforce realizes that he has to change public opinion before he can change political opinion. So there's actually a huge public campaign, which is very libertarian-esque, is to go to each and every individual and to try and change their minds rather than go straight to the seat of power, which I think is a very libertarian-esque idea. There's also French Revolution is mentioned in the film because obviously this is the time of William Pitt in the 1790s. Right. So they actually take a rather negative stance on the French Revolution, with one of the members being very pro-French Revolution at the start and then coming to realize that, no, it's actually a bad idea. The revolution is the bad idea. Revolution is not the goal. Reform is the goal. Peaceful reform.
I have a few things from my review of Amazing Grace to share. Again, just want to emphasize part of what I was looking for in my movie list and what I think we're going to highlight every film we talk about is that, yes, it's got this political angle, but it's just a good film, Yep. What I was not going to do was highlight films that, were made by some libertarian friends, but it was pretty much a B film, Like it had the right message, but it just wasn't very good. I was not interested in doing that, right? So Amazing Grace, again, 2007 film. I remember being enthralled. I actually saw it in the theater with my late LCMS friend, by the way, Ryan, who I might have mentioned to you before, Dr. Ford.
Yeah.
And I remember just being enthralled. Both of us were. I remember both of us were just enthralled with it. So one comment and then a few strategic lessons from the film, because I thought that was interesting. So I don't think these are spoilers really exactly. It's something to watch for when you watch the film. First of all, I say that, who are the enemies? Who are their opponents of abolition? There's the businessmen who are in the slave trade, the politicians who are in bed with those businessmen. There's a conservatism that stands by this unjust institution simply because it's old. And by the way, that's a terrible argument. I wish I'd known this when I wrote this review. That's a really terrible argument because slavery had been abolished in Christendom
until
once already, and then it made like a comeback. So people who were like, well, there's always been slavery, they were lying about their own history because Europe had abolished slavery because of becoming Christian, So there's a whole story to be told, and I would love to tell it sometime on this channel about slavery going away and then what forces brought it back. And I think there's some rather nefarious forces that were involved with bringing it back. But anyway, that's another story. So there's wrong-headed economic arguments like that the prosperity of Britain is built on slavery. I mean, this is at the time, right, that the Industrial Revolution is bring Britain to new economic heights. But I write, the enemy that looms over the whole long crusade is simply despair. It is hopelessness and the desire to give up that Wilberforce struggles with most when his initial efforts fail. So that's one of the things that I think you really take home from the film, and it's a lesson that I've written about that I learned from Tolkien as well, the importance of hope. Having said that, some strategic lessons from the movie Amazing Grace. The abolitionists are radical, but they are patient. Gradualism is not an aid to attaining abolition. It's deployed to slow down abolition. Okay? Like they're starting to head towards slavery being abolished, and I'm not remembering the details in the film, but someone comes along and says, look, no, you're right. I want to abolish slavery too, but let's slow down. Let's slow down. You know, this is going too fast.
That was the 7-year plan. The
right.
7-year compromise.
Yeah, exactly. The fundamental argument of the abolitionists is a moral one based on an appeal to natural law. The abolitionists, in their public campaign in particular, carefully document and publicize the violence and brutality of the system. I think that's extremely important, and boy, do we have an opportunity with that for that now, with all the brutality going around on freedom, being deployed against freedom marches and stuff like this, right? And the state police being really brutal. Public opinion can win even against massive entrenched interests. That'd be one to debate with my friend Academic Agent, because that goes against elite theory, I think. War is a strategic obstacle to liberation and a support for entrenched interests. Now, the reason I mention that, I don't know if you remember about this part, Mad Merc, but they're in a war with Napoleon, and that just kind of puts a big pause on the whole thing. And abolitionism goes nowhere until the war is over, basically.
Yes. But they also use it as an opportunity. So they raid slave ships that may...
What?
Hello.
Oh.
They quickly find workarounds to try and help the movement and free slaves through the support of the war effort.
Right. Okay, so anyway, those are some strategic points to keep in the back of your head. Well, like I said, enjoying the film because it's just an enjoyable film and well made. And film. Who's the guy who plays Fox? Such a big name. You know, the one who's pro French Revolution. Oh shoot! I should have IMDb up.
Well, just while you're looking up that, on the point about the war effort and the raiding of slave ships, it's a very important lesson about adaptability. The adaptability of your cause. Make your argument suit the needs of whomever you're arguing to, and they'll be far more likely to adopt it.
Oh yeah, Rufus Sewell. Oh no, I'm sorry. He plays Thomas Clarkson. I don't know why I thought I had him as Charles Fox. That's Michael Gambon. Anyway, some great actors. Albert Finney plays John Newton, the author of the Amazing Grace. So yeah, just trying to indicate this is not a second-tier film. Top British actors, really well made and just interesting and moving, and so much to learn from it. Okay, any other comments on Amazing Grace, gentlemen? All right.
No, just the abolition of slavery. Very good move towards freedom.
Can't beat that. Okay. What else, Mad Merc?
And this will be my final film. I won't do the other film I had here. Paths of Glory by Kubrick.
Go ahead.
Now, Paths of Glory is set in the First World War. It is about 3 French soldiers after a failed attack by a zealous commander looking for promotion, are picked at random to be executed and basically have the blame put onto them. Their commander uh, tries to free them. He tries to fight for their liberty and fight for their rights as men. And it basically goes through this trial and how it's already predetermined and the different characters along the way and their motivation. So there's a heavy, heavy emphasis on corrupted authority and playing with the lives of men underneath them. So the commander, the general who first launches the attack, at the very beginning of the film, he is very much, nope, this attack will not work, sir. The anthill, which is the objective, will not fall because it's just too heavily defended, no matter what I do. And then the field marshal, the general above him, he says, well, I don't want to say anything, but you're up for promotion. And then his attitude changes because his incentives have changed, his personal incentives. And then he becomes very despotic and very zealous and trying to take the objective because obviously his promotion is on the line. There are individual characters that so for example, the commander who tries to save his men, at the end of the film, he has a fantastic speech about how the entire system has been corrupted by the incentives and greed of people in command. And there's a great line where the head commander says, these men didn't fight, so I had them shot. The general who you have now got rid of, he ordered artillery to fire on his own men, and therefore I had him brought to commission. Where have I done wrong? And he just looks at him and he says, sir, because you can't see it, I pity you. And it's a very powerful line because the entire system is corrupt, but they can't even see it.
Yeah, it sounds like this issue of you get down inside the system and you're following the bureaucratic rules, and well, it's the Nuremberg defense, right? I was just following orders. I was just doing what was right according to the system, without stepping back and going, okay, but what does this mean morally? Separate from, right, getting along within the system, right?
Right, and there's other parts of the film, for example, the head general, the top man, he actually believes that the colonel, the commander, is trying to take the general, the very zealous general's job. Right? He thinks that's what he's doing it for. He thinks he's just playing the game. But in reality, he's actually trying to save these men's lives, and he just doesn't understand. He sees them as naive for actually trying to do the right thing. It's a great essay on the corruption of authority. It's great. Sorry, not essay. Film on the corruption of authority. It's great. Look at how men's lives, individuals' lives, can just be seen as normal waste. So, for example, in the film, after the spoiler alert, after the execution of the three men, which is also highly symbolic. One of them is lame, the other is a coward, the other is standing strong and proud. The general says over dinner to the commander and to the top general, oh, your men died very well, by the way. Just such a callous line. Just not caring about the actual men themselves. They died very well.
Right. Yeah, so this is a 1957 film, directed by Stanley Kubrick, as you mentioned, and starring Kirk Douglas, who some of you might have to think of as the father of Michael Douglas. I hope not, but okay. I actually
played Spartacus, isn't it?
Say again.
He's the same person who played Spartacus, isn't it?
Yeah, Kirk Douglas. I think so.
Yeah.
Sounds right to me. Okay, I have no other comments on this film because I haven't seen it, to my shame. But thank you for talking it up. I can learn from my own show. That's allowed. Okay, any other comments on Paths of Glory?
Yes.
Paths of Glory.
Yes.
Okay.
just that I highly recommend that everyone go see it for not just as like a war. It's not really a war film. It's far more about how authority is corrupted and how good men are stifled by the system,
Mm-hmm.
by a bureaucratic system.
Yes, and in the World War One French army, it was especially known for having high rates of mutiny, with kind of like the only saving grace being that we in America took over the front line towards the end of the war when they were collapsing. They had high levels of mutiny because their officers would oftentimes push for some sort of idea of Napoleonic glory in the year 1918. It would get a lot of people killed. It was unpopular. They had no regard for the lives of their countrymen, and oftentimes it would result in different soldiers getting court-martialed, executed, or you know, sent on a suicidal charge just because they tried to stop something that was obviously not going to work.
Mm.
Even in history, you don't even if you want to kind of learn the system that the film is describing, even in history, you get kind of the exact same feeling from it, and it's honestly quite brutal.
Okay, it's Ryan's turn.
Yeah.
What's up first?
So I'm going to talk about the films that I watched this week in the order that I watched them, and I kind of wish I would have reversed it. So I started with Doctor Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb, and it was a very good comedy. And I went in knowing about like 3 popular scenes from it or so. Uh, I'm assuming that we're allowing spoilers for the decades old films that I'm about
Yeah.
to
Right,
rattle
exactly.
off
This
here.
is a 1964 film. Again,
Yep.
oh, nice segue. Directed by Stanley Kubrick.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, I went into it knowing about like 3 popular lines, and that was it. I knew nothing else of what it was about except that it like ends in nuclear annihilation. I was has Doctor Strangelove's name as like that's the title, but he only has like 10 minutes of screen time in the whole thing, and I was really confused by that. But um, it captures the whole film perfectly captures the mind of like of our current elite or of a government bureaucrat. They're playing around with the lives of millions of people that they're supposed to be stewards over, as if they're just pawns on a board to sacrifice. They're entirely hypocritical, both the U.S. and the communist side, and they're also deeply perverted or unjust, various different personal vices that will influence their decision making. So you have Buck, who is the main sort of like the main general of the whole thing, other than General Ripper. He's the guy in the war room that's kind of giving off like just information about the military that the president knows nothing about, despite giving essentially a blank check to them, which I think that's a perfect kind of explanation for what's happened in the past 20 years. Um, he's kind of he starts the film having extramarital affairs with his secretary, goes into the war room. They call in the Russian ambassador, and when the Russian ambassador informs the president that the premier of the Soviet Union would be, drunken with women, he calls them a degenerate atheist communist. And you can't get irony better than how Kubrick writes it in this comedy.
Yeah.
And the best part about it is it just perfectly captures sort of the irony of any of our elites lecturing us on morality, because they do not hold to a single bit of it.
Right.
And then you have another part in the film, the war part, the nuclear annihilation part. You have Buck say like, we could launch everything at the Soviets now, and we could take out most of their missiles, and we could lose 15 to 20 million people's tops. Not a big loss. Otherwise, we're losing 150 million. So but might as well pick and choose, because we obviously can't try to work out, a non-multi-million slaughter in this situation. And that also I think, perfectly captures the mindset of our elites. They will just spend millions of lives if it gets them their desired outcome.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing stopping them from that. There's no reason for them not to. They're doing it right now with the current goings on for the past year and a half, almost 2 years now. And that's just what they'll do. And they will do this until the Earth is quite literally annihilated. And I think this obviously hasn't happened to kind of paint it onto real life, though I'm sure it's not hard for any of us to imagine. Towards the end of the film, they're talking about trying to put a remnant of the U.S. population in the mine shaft so they can live on past the doomsday bomb that the Soviets have worked up. And they're saying, like, we could get 200,000 people in, save them, we can continue on the race. And you get the input of government bureaucrats and scientists. And the original plan goes to save the population to, well, we could just put a ratio of 10 women to 1 man in there. And, we could make sure that all of us get in there to pass down our traditions and leadership.
Right.
And we'll also select the women for their sexual fertility and stimulation. Like, they're doing that. And then the military part of the government bureaucracy takes over the conversation. And he starts talking about, well, if the Soviets put people in mine shafts, we have to account for that too. And if we don't breed quickly enough, they're going to outbreed us, and now we'll have a mine shaft gap.
Yeah.
Which is a brilliant comical play on the nuclear or the doomsday gap
Right.
that was
Right.
talked about in the Cold War so often.
Yeah.
And in the middle of this conversation, the film ends with nuclear annihilation. No one's left, and it just perfectly, like, I cannot think of like something better that I've seen that captures like the mind of our elites and our bureaucrats, like everything from their hypocrisy to their lack of morals to their complete and utter disregard for us. Like, it's perfect.
Yep.
So like that's my analysis of my first viewing of Doctor Strangelove.
Okay, I've got a few things to share on this one. It is on my list here on my film page at the Mises Institute. Of course, I shared the modest and acceptable civilian casualties, no more than 10 to 20 million killed tops, depending on the breaks. I think I didn't put it in my review, but I thought he also said something like, we'll get a bloody nose. He uses some kind of metaphor like that.
Yeah.
To refer to like millions of people dying,
Yeah. Yeah, whole cities wiped off the map because of, state-invented weapons. Yeah.
So the president at one point wonders how it is that a nuclear confrontation is occurring due to a paranoid defense program he had approved. The military leader in charge, played by George C. Scott, no less, replies in typical bureaucratic fashion, sir, I don't think it's fair to condemn a whole program because of a single slip-up.
Right. And I forgot about this aspect because there's just so many like good angles for this movie. They also capture just how you in the bureaucracy, even on top of it, can get lost in it. So the president, at multiple points in time, he's like, well, why are the Soviets building a doomsday bomb? Like, why would they ever do that? And the Russian ambassador says, well, we saw you were building one in the New York Times. And he's like, we're not building one. And then you have Strangelove, like the first time he speaks in the movie, he kind of wheels himself over. And he says something like, well, actually, you gave me a blank check to investigate it like 2 years ago. Do you not remember? And this happens again with the procedure that allows General Ripper to send the bombs. The president, his first introduction is him getting angry at the military for bypassing him as the commander-in-chief because he was supposed to get the final say. And they have to remind him that he signed off on the plan that allowed them to that allowed the military to take the initiative and launch, given a certain set of circumstances. So, like, even it does a good job at capturing just the scope of the bureaucracy because they go through so many papers, acts, spendings, and all these different schemes that they cook up. You can't.
Right.
One person cannot keep track of all of them, and it does a good job at tracking that in a very subtle way.
Yeah, it makes me
Sorry,
think.
I didn't mean to.
It makes
land
me
for that
think
one.
of some research that got approved over in Wuhan. But anyway,
Yeah.
that might have gotten lost in the shuffle of everything going on. Um, okay, let's see. Do we still have? Okay. Um, anyway, couple rabbit holes on this film. Yes, totally agree with your analysis, Ryan. There's a lot to learn from this film. He really saw to the heart of,
Yep.
I don't know what you want to call it, the bureaucratic modern state, I think.
Yep.
Um, so, in particular, I want to highlight a concept that I feel like everyone needs to know. It's called crackpot realism. This is a phrase, a concept defined by the great Texan sociologist C. Wright Mills in 1958 when he published The Causes of World War III. And I just want to read you a passage from Mills, quoted here from an article by Alexander Cockburn, the late great Alexander Cockburn. Or wait, did he die? Anyway, in Crackpot, see if this connects at all with the film as you listen to this. It's a several sentences here. In crackpot realism, a high-flying moral rhetoric is joined with an opportunist crawling among a great scatter of unfocused fears and demands. The expectation of war solves many problems for the crackpot realists. Instead of the unknown fear, the anxiety without end, some men of the higher circles prefer the simplification of known catastrophe. They know of no
Right.
solutions to the paradoxes of the Middle East and Europe, the Far East and Africa, except the landing of Marines. They prefer the bright, clear problems of war, as they used to be, for they still believe that winning means something, although they never tell us what.
Exactly. Yeah.
Got it?
You see this twice in the film.
Yeah.
We've already talked about the one of like the guy in the war rooms telling off all who could die and we could get this many less millions dead. Only 20 million.
Right, right.
But you also the reason that the bombs are launched is because General Ripper, who's I believe is the first military man you get introduced to in the film. He is convinced, and it's uncovered throughout the film. He doesn't just say it immediately. He's convinced that the communists are fluoridating the water, and trying to destroy your bodily fluids. And it has this
Right.
hilarious line of, "Have you ever seen a commie drink water?" So, he's convinced they're fluoridating the water. He traces it back to starting in 1946. Now not that big of a conspiracy, considering that England just started doing that to their water like 2 days ago. But anyways, besides the point, he's convinced the communists are after the water, so he wants to launch the nukes, get rid of all of them, kind of restart everything, if you will, but without the communists. He eventually, gets hunted down and he commits suicide because he's, for all of his strong rhetoric, he's too afraid or cowardly to deal with torture.
That is my other rabbit hole. Perfect segue. And that is fluoridation.
Yeah.
There is an article by Murray Rothbard called Fluoridation Revisited. I am sharing the link right now in the chat, in the live chat. And let's see. Yeah, I'm not going to try to summarize the article or anything, but basically he goes back, Rothbard goes over the history of why there was a drive for fluoridation, and then the medical concerns that started to accumulate. And of course, it's interesting to Rothbard because it's a classic case of, government and business colluding together in a corrupt fashion.
Yep.
Let me just read the very first sentence, because of course Rothbard faces head on what he knows is going to be the instant reaction once anyone sees an article on this topic. He says, "Yes, I confess, I'm a veteran anti-fluoridationist, thereby, not for the first time, risking placing myself in the camp of right-wing kooks and fanatics. So it's an utterly charming article, and it will red pill you on the fluoridation issue. Oh, actually, I'm really glad I shared this article. It's more relevant than I hadn't even been thinking. I'm thinking in the past here. I'm not like thinking about current day. What this article is a Rothbard taking on a topic of mass forced medical procedure, basically. That's essentially what he's addressing in this article. So, yeah, read the article. You might find that it seems more relevant than you'd guess. Okay, any other comments on Dr. Strangelove? Let me get the whole title right. I have it in front of me from my notes here. 1964's Dr. Strangelove, or How I Stopped Worrying and Learned to Love the Bomb. Anything else on that?
I think that I covered everything I wanted to.
Great. Okay. Mad Merc, are you still with us? I saw you disappear, I thought, or something. Mad Merc, still there?
I can hear him.
Oh, you can hear him?
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Why can't I? Okay, that's him. That's you. That's him. And I'm sorry, could you just say check, Mad Merc? Oh, I just heard you. Oh, that's weird. Okay, good. All right. Okay, next film, Ryan. Oh, please. Yeah, please, go. Right.
The next choice that I have is actually going to be the introduction of a system that is like a farce from the beginning. If we're ready to go on.
Yes.
So yesterday I watched the 1975, if I remember correctly, The Man That Would Be King. Which is the the film version of Rudyard Kipling's very famous short story. Put to film, has Sean Connery and Michael Caine. I mean, how can't you like it? So what we have, and I thought that the movie did a good job at following the book, personally. It's just that the movie's a lot more explicit in that the narrator, or the person being talked to, is Kipling himself, whereas Kipling didn't state that in the original, which is just a completely minor detail aside from the main point here. So what you have are two former British riflemen, or I believe one's a cavalryman, two British armymen, stuck in British India, and they are they're essentially the world's best opportunists. They do a lot of blackmailing, smuggling, running, various different things. The film starts with them trying to blackmail one of the Rajas to make money to go to the faraway mythical land of Kafiristan in Afghanistan. Now, they tell it to Kipling. Kipling tries to stop them because they're doing identity fraud of him without knowing it. So they're trying to play themselves off as a correspondent for a newspaper that Kipling is the correspondent for. Kipling stops them from essentially getting executed. They find out that all three of them are Masons, which might set off some red flags for some people. Find out they're all Masons. They later meet in Kipling's office, get some knowledge and information about the faraway land that they're going to. Let me put it this way: they are going to go there, tell any king.
Wait! I've got the exact line in my notes. Ready?
Perfect.
Here we go.
Perfect. Let's go.
So they explain to Kipling their plan to take over Kafiristan. and I note in my review, they do not pretend to be doing it for Kafiristan's good. Quote, it's a place of warring tribes, which is to say, a land of opportunity for such as we, who know how to train men and lead them into battle. Their plan is simple. We'll go there. We'll say to any chief we can find, do you want to vanquish your foes? Of course he'll say, go to it. We'll fight for him, make him king, then we'll subvert the king, we'll seize his royal throne, and loot the country 4 ways from Sunday.
Yep. And so that's their plan. Kipling kind of stares at them like they're insane, and he explains to them that no white man has made it past the mountains to get into Kafiristan and made it back alive. They see no problem with that. Connery kind of dresses up and plays the part of a mad priest, and Kane plays the part of his servant. They get into a caravan, make it through eventually, going through snow in the mountains, and Afghan tribesmen that tried to kill them. They eventually get there. They're greeted at a very traditional-looking Afghan fortress. The very kind of looks like the Bala-Hizr in Kabul. They get shot at by arrows. One of the guys was a translator for a geology survey, if I remember correctly. Gets the guys to stop firing. They find the king, offer their service to them. They conquer the other guys, their neighbors, after turning this Afghan tribe into like a mock British army, which I thought was hilarious, that whole scene. They turn up, they take the army to the neighbors, they completely slaughter them, make their way into their fortress or their castle, whatever you want to call it. Then the king that they were trying to help he's a very cowardly person. He stays back during the battle, and then after Kane and Connery win the fight for him, he goes in there and tries to behead the leader of the other tribe. Being good Englishmen, Kane and Connery prevent him from doing that, and introduce more laxer policies, like just present us half of your wealth and we'll take that instead. And and I think they divvy out like the tribe's women to the winning kingdom. And then they go back outside, and the tribesmen, now united, are playing is it polo that they play? They play they play polo, I believe it is, with the king's head that was really cowardly, having beheaded him for being weak. They do this. They repeat this throughout all the different tribes, and essentially become kings. The character played by Sean Connery gets there's a confusion. They think that he is a god and like the second coming of Alexander the Great, because he got shot with an arrow that landed in his bandolier. He didn't bleed. He pulled it out. That was like their prophecy. So the high priest of the region wants to go to them, and they've been looting everyone after all this and siphoning through tribute that had been brought to them, very state-like. The high priest goes to them. They get in a very big mishap because, he's not actually invincible. He just got lucky. And then they see his Freemason symbol. They're also Freemasons, so they think that he's actually like the second coming of Alexander the Great. And they show him this mountain of gold and, treasure that they have been, or this cave full, gold and treasure that they've been storing. They take it very greedily, but now Connery's character starts to actually play into his kind of his facade. He starts to actually think that he is the god of this land.
Oh no!
He ends up taking like religious tribute from all of them, and eventually he has them build infrastructure, which I thought was kind of hilarious. That's what a state always does to keep people busy: build infrastructure.
Right.
He builds a bridge across the chasm, which will later be his downfall. And then he wants to finally take a wife, which was against the terms that they made before they set out to do all of this. They had prohibited themselves from drinking alcohol or being with women. Thinking that he was the god, Connery wants to take a wife. It's completely allegorical to trying to basically recreate Alexander the Great. He takes a woman called Roxanne, which was one of the women that were taken by the Greeks, hundreds of years ago. They have a myth that if a god, tries to make love to a woman, then the woman will go up in flames. So he tries to get married. Michael Caine has a falling out with him because, he basically says, why don't we stop while we're ahead for once? Just take the money and run.
Yeah.
Connery doesn't want to do that. He goes ahead with the marriage ceremony. The woman bites him as he tries to kiss her. The priest sees that he's bleeding, and he says, he yells out, he is neither God nor devil, but a man. And they end up trying to kill him. They make a running retreat with riflemen. They end up slaughtering like dozens of them, completely needlessly. They eventually get surrounded. They put Connery onto the middle of his rope bridge and cut it, and he falls to his death. And they crucify Michael Caine's character between two pine trees. And he eventually makes his way back to Kipling to tell the story, and then later dies. I don't believe the movie actually tells that part. He actually, in the book, he's found like the next day in the middle of the road, actually gone insane. So Kipling puts him in an asylum, and he dies from heat stroke later. But I don't think the movie actually tells that. So now, how does that all relate to our topic?
Oh wait, quick note before you draw out the themes. As the chat pointed out, Roxanne is played by Shakira Caine, namely Michael Caine's wife.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh. Very cool. I have no clue about actors or any of that. I'm a complete beginner when it comes to the world of film, so I was just looking at it for the message, if you will. So that whole plot, how does it relate to our theme today? Well, the characters that Michael Caine and Sean Connery were playing, I cannot think of a greater analogy for just how the state works. It creeps into a society, or barges its way in, depending on where in history you are. It's completely artificial, shouldn't be there, has no good intentions. It will slaughter a ton of people. It will destroy their traditions and their religions, looting them all the way. And then after a while, depending on the state, you might get some good patron of the people elected there, or that crowns himself emperor, that actually falls for the lies of the state and thinks himself to be like God's blessing among the people, which is what happened to Connery's character, thinking he was actually the god. You eventually get states that will buy into their own lies, think that they're doing it for the good of the people and not just for the robbery of their cronies up at the top. And Yep, and you eventually get like the state's version of mission creep, where they keep going and keep going, and eventually it falls because why should it be there? No one likes it. Everyone's actively hostile to it. It's looting them. It lied to them. It subverted their religion. It just ends with complete tragedy, because now everyone's poorer as a result. Their religion and their people have been killed and destroyed. Their homes have been, irreversibly damaged, and they can't even go back to their way of life because now they've introduced modern tactics, modern warfare that can't be unlearned.
Right.
So I can't think of like a better sort of fictional analogy for the state, intentional or not, because I know Kipling was an imperialist, probably wasn't his goal here, but he did a perfect job of writing a very good fiction account and making the perfect analogy for the state.
Okay, any other comments? I totally agree. What a film. And again, just a really good film, right? I mean, totally separate from the themes we would draw out from it. It's a film you will enjoy watching.
And it's a short story too, so why not go read that as well? It's very high quality.
Oh, someone mentioned in the chat, this is Steve Saylor's favorite film. That's interesting. Steve Saylor writes about movies in addition to many other interesting and spicy topics. So just highlighting again, this is 1975, stars Sean Connery and Michael Caine. There's a bit part, namely the part of Kipling, who's a character in the film. That's by Christopher Plummer. So, yeah, it's some heavy hitters in this one. Okay, any other comments on The Man Who Would Be King from 1975?
Yes. That's,
Because
that's
they
kind of
say
like the whole point.
they say that they come just to loot it, and the vision
Yep.
of the Anointed is that they think they're like doing something good.
Well, it turns into that. That's
Oh,
that's
okay.
the whole
Got
that's
it.
the whole conflict that arises because for a good half of the film, you don't actually have a conflict. It is just like it's like an epic. There's no like you get times in like an epic where there's no like overarching evil to be defeated. It's just the life of the protagonist doing whatever they're doing, usually something epic, as is the name. But eventually you get Connery's character thinking he is the god, he is here for the people. He starts legislating these hilarious laws, and in like a scene about halfway to 2/3 of the way through the movie, who he kind of starts legislating these laws. He thinks he's doing it for the good of the people, and you get this conflict that arises because he buys into the vision of the Anointed.
I'm sorry. I'm getting people saying that Mad Merc is not being picked up by them. Could you do a mic check, Mad Merc? Oh dear. Okay. Yep. What happened? Let's see. We are hearing you, but they are not hearing you. That would be muting. Nope. Don't want that. What is the problem? You seem to be in on what you should be in on. Had you come in on guest one? Okay, give me just a moment to fiddle and see if I can figure anything out. Because this is a bummer. Okay, well, sounds like Mad Merc's going to have to go anyway, he just told us. And I do see now, thank you, chat. I do see that we're no longer hearing him. Yeah, didn't you have to... It looked like you dropped out and had to come back in, Mad Merc?
All right, that would probably be the issue because I think that happened to me once, and it screwed up my audio.
Really? Did I fix it? How did I fix it? Okay. Well, how about we let you go now because the audience can't hear you, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But we got through your movie picks, so that is awesome.
To the members of the audience, Mr. Mercenary would like to relay that he loves you all, and he will be back in the future with proper audio equipment.
Right. Yes. Okay. So goodbye to Mad Merc. Thank you, sir. And then, I'm gonna have to leave it like this because I've got you as guest too. And if I go to one guest, it'll only be him and not you. So
right.
It'll look like he's on the screen. Here, I guess I could. Here's what I'll do. Where is the avatar for guest one? Oh, I used that one. What if I do that? There we go. I just took his avatar off the screen to kind of imply that he's not here anymore. I guess I could do that for his name as well to reduce confusion. There we go. Okay, so we just have a blank spot in between us. Okay.
All right.
Okay. Oh, Leo sent a. Okay, yeah. Anyway, we'll be checking super chats and so forth. All right. Yeah. Here's the hard part because I was going to be all prepped and I got stuck in traffic. So I'm going to really wing it, and I'm going to pick 3 out of my list here. I know one that I definitely wanted to talk about. Again, along the line, I don't have a lot to say about it, but along the lines of just a movie that I think is enjoyable. It's just a fun, Rothbardian film in the sense of just it's an enjoyable film to watch. But boy, does it have great themes! And believe it or not, I have to bring up Rothbard because it is called Enemy of the State. Yes, Hollywood made a movie called Enemy of the State, and the enemy of the state is not the bad guy. He's the good guy. So, I mean, already this is sounding promising, right? This is from 1998 and stars, believe it or not, Will Smith. It is a sequel to a film called The Conversation, which was by Francis Ford Coppola and starred Gene Hackman. I recommend The Conversation as well, but I'm not going to talk about that. It's quite good. If the best experience would be to watch The Conversation and then watch Enemy of the State. Anyway, but what's fun about Enemy of the State? I haven't seen it for years, so I'm just going to go with my notes here. A delightfully paranoid warning about the power of government in a technological age set in an action thriller format. Will Smith plays the lead, a man who finds himself hunted by government agents for no reason that he can fathom. Gene Hackman actually plays his character from The Conversation in this movie. He's an expert on snooping technology who is so paranoid because he knows how much you can be snooped on that he is just lives in isolation because it's just not, he wants to avoid being snooped on, and he just knows that if you do this, you'll be snooped on. If you do that, you'll be snooped on. So his solution is basically he lives in a Faraday cage, you know,
All right.
you know what I mean, like in a metal cage that where things can't snoop on him and stuff. Anyway, so it's really great, and I would say that it is one of those films that feels maybe more relevant now than when it was made, because that experience we're having now, where big tech is able to really interfere with our lives, we're starting to really feel that now, right?
Yep.
Big tech can know a lot about us, and can kind of follow us around and can kick us off platforms and all that stuff. That's sort of pretty much the theme of Enemy of the State, except that it's the state using all this technology, and it's just amped up. You know, it's everywhere he goes, there's a camera on him. You know, even in the most unlikely places, there's a camera on him. We're not quite there in the United States. Maybe they're there in like England or something, but here there's just too many. It's too big of a country. I can get away from cameras really easy from where I live.
For now, yeah.
For now, yeah. Lots of fields. Go ahead.
There's a certain island nation, south of the equator that it's becoming more apparent to me as the day goes on. Things might be a bit gone there in terms of surveillance and preemptive measures taken to quell dissent.
Yep. Hey, Lady of Shalott made a really good point. She says, I love The Conversation and the German equivalent, The Lives of Others, about a Stasi agent. That is a film that people keep telling me to see, and I have to say I haven't seen it, but I've heard that it's excellent. And again, I think it has to do with spying on people and things like that. So anyway, one last thing I can say to recommend the Enemy of the State to you. As I worked on this list, I brought some films to the attention of the Mises Institute because I was doing this page for them, right?
Right.
They liked Enemy of the State so much that they used it at the Mises University, I think it was. They had a night where they just wanted to show everybody a film. It was Rothbard graduate. Anyway, it was one of their conferences, one of their student conferences. And I remember them telling me, yeah, Enemy of the State is great. In fact, we used that for our movie night when we wanted to show a movie to everybody at our conference, So Mises Institute approved.
Very nice.
And it's fun, and things blow up. So, it's a guy. What am I trying to say? I'm trying to say it's got a great libertarian anti-state theme, and it's a great kind of guy flick. How about that? Let's put it that way.
Perfect.
Okay, let's see. I'd love to throw a curveball in. Let me see about that one that the French folks were excited about, just to get a little obscure. Yeah, okay. Okay. This is actually about the welfare state, and you could say multicultural experiments or something like that. It's from 1995. It's called Hate. This is the one that my French comrades specifically said the filmmakers would have hated the way I interpreted the film. but they loved it. They were like rubbing their hands with glee, you know. They didn't have the word, you know, this was years ago that we were having this conversation, but had they had the word, they would have said I had a based take on the film. Anyway, here's what I wrote about it. Welcome to the international welfare culture. Starting in a government housing project in Paris, this black and white film follows 3 bored and angry youth around for 24 hours. Saïd, Vince, and Hubert, who are Arab, Jewish, and African French respectively, are able to unite together despite racial differences in their hatred of the life they feel trapped in. They are angry at the cops, the system, or anyone they run across. They don't know what precisely is wrong or who is to blame, but they know they want to hit back and break free of it somehow. Starkly and compellingly told, the film presents no answers, but presents the questions urgently. This government-housed and government-funded culture dots the urban landscape of the developed world, marked by common elements that now transcend borders like graffiti and rap. In fact, much of the soundtrack for this French film consists of Americans rapping in English. The system has 3 messages for these young men. You are not useful, you are not responsible, and you are a victim. It is not a system for humans. It must be stopped. So that's 1995's Hate. It is, I would say, quite different than almost all the films we've talked about because it is a little bit more of like a continental style film, a little more arty. Go ahead, man.
So, earlier this week, I don't know if I should. Okay, earlier this week, I was talking to someone from Sweden, and I was asking them because they're older than me, like by a couple of generations. I was asking them about like how things have changed there specifically in regards to immigration and demographics, because I'm an American. I don't necessarily know how things happened over there in the near past, like the past 20 years. I don't know how that happened, just that it's at the state that it is now. So like, how did they get such demographic replacement and violence in their cities? Well, I was expecting, sort of like a lambasting of like immigration policy or something like that. But they made a very great point that the majority of the blame lies within the way that the welfare state operates. And it's not necessarily that they are going there for the welfare state, though there is a good chunk that does that. It's more that they're enabled by it once they are there for whatever reason. They're forced into a government housing, they get a government check, they aren't allowed to work, and their children are kind of brought up in a state system. So I found it interesting, an interesting take that a lot of the Scandinavian problems going on right now with demographic replacement kind of echoes what this movie points out inadvertently, is that it's the welfare state's problem first and foremost.
Right. And despite regular talk of reform, I think it's fair to say that the welfare state continues to get spread more and more around the world, right? It's part of the global American empire, it seems to me.
Yep.
Is to bring the welfare state everywhere,
Like any good democracy, its leaders will make a bunch of promises about reform to fix all the problems, and then only worsen them for political gain. There's no fixing this. You can't feasibly do it for 40 different reasons in our systems. The only way for this to stop is for it to become so ineffectual that it doesn't exert power anymore. Or for whatever reason, they have a complete change of heart or a complete change of elites, or if the whole thing collapses. Those are your ways out at this point.
Great input from the chat. Thank you, folks. Lumberg points out the original title, which I guess some people know it under its original title. Haine is the French title. In fact, when I looked it up, it didn't even say anything about it being called Hate. That's weird. When I watched it, it was called Hate in English, but Haine. And then Lady of Shalott says there are huge housing projects on the outskirts of Paris that the gendarmes do not enter. So no-go zones. And the Haine or Hate would expose you to that.
Wasn't there a piece of fiction named after a passage in Revelation about parts of France being taken over by, different groups that they essentially just occupy them. Isn't that you know what I'm referencing here? I'm trying not to be too Fed posty.
I'm not sure. Here, sorry, I'm
Okay.
distracted because I'm trying to pick my last film. Okay,
All right.
let's see. I'm gonna do no, I'm gonna wait on that because we are actually gonna have a short episode, relatively short episode today. Let's see here. Man, there was one I really was excited about. Oh, maybe I could just, do I have just the speech from this one? Okay, here's one. This is more of an anti-war film, but I'm an anti-war guy.
Yep.
It stars James Garner. Oh, and Julie Andrews. I forgot about that. Yeah. 1964's The Americanization of Emily. I think part of the reason it jumps out to me is because I know that there's a number of my older comrades who really swear by this. Like, I think maybe Robert Higgs was a big fan, Butler Schaefer, Brittany Schaefer's father. Anyway, yeah, I'll just read you what I wrote. So, 1964's Americanization of Emily. Sometimes under the guise of comedy, art is at its most brutally honest. A case in point is this delightful anti-war classic starring Julie Andrews and James Garner as cynical World War II military man Charlie Madison, who has rejected the nobility of war. In one of several stunning bits of dialogue, he calmly explains, "It's not greed or ambition that makes war. It's goodness. Wars are always fought for the best of reasons, for liberation or manifest destiny, always against tyranny and always in the interest of humanity. So far this war, we've managed to butcher some 10 million humans in the interest of humanity. Next war, it seems, we'll have to destroy all of man in order to preserve his damn dignity." Hopefully that gives you a little bit of a flavor of Charlie Madison. He is the jaundiced eye, right? He is super cynical as he looks over war. And as you can hear, he sees right to the core of the humanitarian excuses that are always used. This is a theme that Ryan and I have, Ryan and I in one episode and with Tom DiLorenzo in another, we've explored recently in our Road to Empire series, how the war between the states, and then after the war between the states, well, a couple things. War between the states, the Reconstruction in the South, Reconstruction in the South. Yeah, the Lincoln Lie was the name of the episode. The Reconstruction episode, and then the War on the Plains Indians. In each of these cases, we could print you out reams of humanitarian rhetoric, right? While they went off and made a mess of things and hurt people and killed people. And so that's something Charlie Madison says really well. And I mean, I wish I could just read speech after speech from the movie. I just have this one and quoted in my review. Let me finish what I wrote and then further comments. In addition to Charlie Madison's penetrating comments on war, worth the film alone, there is also a hilarious send-up of the military high command. The film portrays them as more concerned about the women that Madison procures for them and inter-service jockeying than about the lives of the men they command, which makes me think a lot about what you said about Dr. Strangelove, right?
Yep.
Despite or because of the brutal honesty, this is a genuinely enjoyable film that confronts the issue of how to live free in a world of pointlessly fighting states. Unrated, but some risque scenes, I warn. Let me just share this again. I know a number of people have joined as we've gone on. What I'm reading from is my page on the Mises Institute that they allowed me to have. And they've left up called Films on Liberty and the State. Looks like my last update was November 2006, back when we just had, our third child was around that time. So, eventually we had so many children I couldn't keep doing anything. And so I'm just coming back around to these things. Okay, so might do a lightning round, just mention some titles of some other films from my list. I just put that link in the chat again, by the way. And I'll try to remember to add it to the description of the video so it's easy to find. If you're looking for films to watch, I promise you that you'll find some films here that you will enjoy watching. It's not just like, political message films. They're films that I genuinely can recommend as films that were enjoyable to watch, but there's a lot going on in them that is really insightful and interesting. Okay, did you have any comment? I don't know if you're even familiar with Americanization of Emily, Ryan.
I'm afraid I'm not, but I
Okay.
I have a couple of films with the lightning, the lightning round.
Okay, yeah, okay. Well, how about this? I want to be wrapped up in about 10 minutes, but let's
Yep.
check for super chats and so forth. Let's
Sounds
get
good.
those done. And because I know that Leo said he mentioned a film. Just got to pull up where my page is. Okay, here we go. That one and that one. Okay. Right. So on Subscribestar, and thanks so much to people who are still supporting the show, and we've even added some recently. You can also, if you're a supporter of the show, this is our channel to send chats. And Leo sent a very nice, they're called tips, but it's like a super chat, right? Leo sent a very nice tip. And and a hint, in addition to supporting the show by being a regular contributor and being able to send super chats this way, I don't know if there's a limit, but it must be very big, because at least somebody sent $2 the other week or the other month, and they sent like a block of text, a giant block of text that would have cost you like $1,000 on YouTube, because they got to charge by the character with super chats. So it allows you to say a little bit more for your money. So it's a great deal. Okay, Leo says, I'm very fond of the central themes and subtexts of Tolkien's work. Pertaining to tonight's issue, I would direct your attention towards the handling of the stewards of Gondor and Denethor II, the managerial elite indeed, and Gandalf's antipathy towards them. There is a lot of subtext in Tolkien's work on the dynamics of the state and the people. Yes, indeed. I didn't highlight the Lord of the Rings films. Maybe they were still coming out at that time. But anyway, I don't think I highlighted the Lord of the Rings films, but I do have an article where I talk about Tolkien. And it's one of my favorite articles by myself, so I might try to slip it into the chat if I can pull it up real quick. And in that, I highlight, among other things, that Tolkien was a self-described anarchist.
Yep. There we go. I was waiting for
Yeah,
that.
and he described it in a funny way. Let's see if I can have the quote. Of the private property sort, not the socialist bomb-throwing sort. His words were better, but that was my summary of it. Anyway, I have an article where I write about Tolkien in 2002 when the films were just starting to come out. And it's called Why Do They Hate Him? And Why We Love Him. So let me put that in the chat. I think, Leo, you will enjoy that article. But yes, absolutely. Tolkien had very interesting thoughts on politics, but he was just too much of an artist to lay it on thick. So you have to, really read and absorb The Lord of the Rings and probably more. And then you start to get a feel for how he's thinking about things. Obviously, with the ring of power, he loathes men abusing power over other men, right?
Yep.
There's something he has no sympathy with. Okay, anyway, that's from Leo. And then over on Super Chat Land, we have one from Mickey. Says, subverting the subversive direction is what Starship Troopers fandom does in a nutshell. Right, so
I believe
Starship
that's-
Troopers was meant to be like a lesson about how fascism is bad or something, right?
Yeah.
From the German director, I think. Super woke, U.S. propagandized Germany over there. But as Sargon covers in a very important video, there's other lessons that can be drawn from Starship Troopers, besides the one the director intended, shall we say. So yeah, absolutely agree with you, Mickey. Okay, so we got like 6 minutes about before we should wrap up. How about this? I'll name a film and then you name a film, and I'll try to do like a sentence on it or something. I'm gonna look through
Ooh.
my list here, or brief.
Alright.
Just we're gonna do brief, lightning round style, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Okay, well, you guys probably know about this, but 1999's election, it really introduced. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting. Anyway, has some great actors in it. Here's the speech that you just have to know if you haven't heard it. They're doing a school election, and one of the young people decides to run for other reasons, and she gives her speech. They each give a speech to become school president, and so she gives a speech that clearly goes beyond commenting on school elections. She says, "Who cares about this stupid election? We all know it doesn't matter who gets elected president of Carver. Do you really think it's going to change anything around here? Make one single person smarter or happier or nicer? The only person it does matter to is the one who gets elected. The same pathetic charade happens every year, and everyone makes the same pathetic promises just so they can put it on their transcripts to get into college. So vote for me, because I don't even want to go to college, and I don't care. And as president, I won't do anything. The only promise I will make is that if elected, I will immediately dismantle the student government so that none of us will ever have to sit through one of these stupid assemblies again." And then everybody's loudly cheering by this point. And she says, "Or don't vote for me. Who cares? Don't vote at all." And then there's a standing ovation. Anyway, just one of the great scenes commenting on democracy. Go, Ryan.
All right. The All Quiet on the Western Front, 1930 version.
Yeah.
Excellent job at outlining just how pointless the war is. No one wants to fight it. They don't even know why they're fighting. And, just the kind of terror and horror that comes along with it, and it's just left with it. Young schoolboys going to die for nothing, thinking that there was glory involved, and then they get back home and, barely anyone believes them that it's, not glorious.
Okay, ready? I'm going to throw in a super chat.
Yeah.
Lumberg says, "We discussed Curtis LeMay a year or so back, Turnip. Did you recognize him in General Turgidsen's character?"
Yep. Okay,
Also, wait, let me finish this super chat. Also, still maintain that LeMay was the most dangerous man of the 20th century. Go ahead.
All right, so Lumberg and I had previously discussed General Curtis LeMay. He was the I found out about him, in my deep dive of American lore. He was the vice president candidate for George Wallace's campaign in 1968, but he was the Air Force commander, if I remember correctly, and he had a policy of ending the Vietnam War, if not through just complete carpet bombing of the country, back to the Stone Age as it were, then by nuclear bomb, because his idea was, Vietnam cannot handle a nuclear strike, so we'll just strike them, finish the war. It'll save our boys' lives, and it'll show that we won't be messed with. Multiple times, he was the war hawk in the government for multiple administrations, and
Oh, wow.
he every single time he was kind of just like, yeah, just throw the nukes at them. It'll solve the war problem.
He was John McCain levels of evil, right?
Yeah. Except he didn't necessarily lobby for wars. He just lobbied for ending them very
right. Brutally.
abruptly.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm going to jump in. We're almost out of time. Here's a curveball, one from Bollywood. Yes, this is on my list. It's called Lagaan, Once Upon a Time in India from 2001. It's a musical about tax resistance. I'm not making this up. And it is a joy. I quoted Rothbard here. Oh, listen to this. I was trying to sort of paraphrase this earlier. Rothbard once wrote, "I am notoriously hostile to films that are A, slow, B, dark and murky, C, with long close-ups of suffering actors' faces substituting for dialogue, and D, in a foreign language. Indeed, these four elements almost always go together." little teaser advertisement for Rothbard's hilarious writing about film. I said, "This film is, I admit, in a foreign language, but it is neither slow, dark and murky, nor lacking in witty dialogue. Perhaps this is because it is not a product of the pretentious and usually depressed European art house cinema, but of the entrepreneurial and vibrant Bollywood, the Indian film industry that is second only to Hollywood in size." So this is a film in the Bollywood style, if you've never seen a Bollywood film, where they're singing and they're dancing and jumping around, and it's just great fun. They have a lot of fun. It's made to be entertaining. You know, I like films that are entertaining personally. Um,
Yep.
and but it is indeed about tax resistance. Here's a quote from the film. The hero of the tale asks the central question of the film. I feel rage in my heart when I pay Lagaan to the Raja, and he gives it to those whiteys with their dirty grasping hands. Who plows this earth to sow the seeds? We do. Who waters it? We do. Why should we fill their coffers with our produce? So it's a great film about tax resistance, and if you've never been introduced to Bollywood, it's a great fun way to do that. Okay, we're pretty much at time, but let's do one more from you, Ryan, before we wrap up.
Ooh, okay. I'm going to pick Brazil. You know, it's basically the
Yes.
modern version of Kafka, is kind of how I see it. You know, complete modern dystopic bureaucracy, completely soul-destroying, impractical, evil and of its own existence. Good watch. And like I said, I think the best way that I can describe it shortly is it's the modern iteration of Franz Kafka.
Yes, absolutely agree. It's also on my list, Brazil, and Terry Gilliam is a personal favorite film director. Formerly of Monty Python, as some people may know, but then he went on to make some very, very interesting films. And I'd have to look at the list before he. Oh, actually, my favorite is actually not Brazil, though Brazil is. It's hard to say that because Brazil is so great. My favorite is actually the Adventures of Baron Munchausen, which has in about 60 seconds one of the greatest critiques of the French Revolution. I need to find a clip of this film and use it in something because it's just a short little segment, and boy, does it tell the story. But anyway, yeah, really big fan of Terry Gilliam, and Brazil is fabulous. It is just an amazing, crazy film. It's not like other films, right, Ryan? Just the look of it is so bizarre, you know.
It's definitely in a league of its own. Good
Yeah.
watch. It's very unique in a very good way.
Okay, so we should be back. I think we must be back on our regular time next week because of I'm hoping to be on a stream with AA. He's going to do Cigar Stream on Fridays for a little while longer, and I'm going to join one week from today. So catch me there. We're going to talk about well, it's somebody you wouldn't have heard of, so don't worry about it. It's someone I know. But it'll be interesting. And then next week, with a lot of help from Ryan, I hope, because I'm editing the event book, we're going to cover the Spanish-American War.
Yes,
And that will
be ready.
That will potentially conclude our Road to Empire series, which started with the Lincoln Lie. And another way of thinking about it, I like Road to Empire. I just think it's a catchy way to put it. I've made a playlist called Road to Empire with these episodes in it. But another way to think about it is that it is the American system being imposed domestically and then turning abroad.
Yep, and taken to its logical conclusion.
Yeah, I think that's a wordier way of talking about the through line of the story that we're telling in these episodes. So I'm really excited to conclude the Road to Empire series. Well, do the next chapter. We'll see what we do with it. But the final chapter I was thinking, and the reason I say conclude, Ryan, is just that with the Spanish-American War, you could argue that you're not on the road to empire, you're just at empire. I figure, yeah, you're there. But I figure that's the way to finish it, is we see that we've told the story of the lead up, of the philosophy behind it, of its application in the South, in the West of the continental United States. And now we're going to finish the story by showing it going abroad.
Yeah,
right.
And at the end of this, at the end of the Spanish-American War, spoilers for the over 100-year-old event, the United States is no longer going to be recognizable compared to its pre-Lincoln iteration. It's going to be completely different in philosophy, government, in terms of military, in terms of organization, completely different.
Right, and a lot closer to what we now know as the United States, and so distant from these United States prior to 1861. So yeah, okay. As I like to say, the global American empire, you're soaking in it. Okay, thanks, Ryan, and thanks to Mad Merc. In fact, he gave us a hint that he might be able to drop in a little bit now that his status has changed slightly. Not regularly, but now and again. So hopefully we'll be able to pull him in now and again, though it'd mean we'd have to do Friday episodes. So probably we'll wait till November when Academic Agent will be switching Cigar Stream off of Fridays, I think.
Yep.
But anyway, lots of good stuff coming, and I hope you enjoyed. Thought I'd do something a little bit different with doing it on a different day, doing it with Mad Merc, not being in competition with Academic Agent this week because he's taking time off. I thought I'd try something different and talk about movies because I've noticed people like talking about movies. People like hearing people talk about movies. I like it. I listened to a film review podcast for years. Just listening to them talk about films, and I wouldn't even watch the films. I just enjoyed hearing them talk about the film most of the time. Okay, well, thank you, and bye, everybody.